I think we'd all agree that a fresh cooked meal is better than a frozen TV dinner. Although DiGiorno's has really come a long way with the frozen pizza. Good on you, DiGiorno's. But does the same apply for frozen embryos versus a fresh embryo transfer? Well, stick around and we'll talk about just that. What's up? My name is Corlendos Scott, and I'm an assisted reproductive technologies attorney in Los Angeles, which simply means that I have dedicated my practice to helping people grow their families through assisted reproductive technologies like embryo donation, sperm donation, egg donation, surrogacy, and all that good stuff. In this episode, we're going to cover the differences between fresh and frozen embryos, which has the better chance for success, and how long can you keep frozen embryos viable? Let's jump in. Like I hinted at in the opening, if we ask is it better to cook with fresh or frozen meats, then I think that we would all definitely prefer fresh meat or produce or anything like that. But the same is not necessarily true when it comes to embryo transfers. Let's begin by looking at the differences between the two types of processes, fresh embryo transfers and frozen embryo transfers. So fresh embryo transfers require a large amount of planning. Why? Because typically the surrogate or intended mother, her cycle must line up with the cycle of whoever's donating the eggs so that the transfer can occur within 5 days after the eggs are retrieved or the embryos are created. So the way it works is the eggs are fertilized with sperm in the laboratory, which then result in the creation of the embryo. Now with the fresh embryo transfer, with only a 5-day waiting period, there's a shorter time to conception. But frozen embryo transfer, or FET as you may see it pop up online, this type of transfer usually occurs 6 to 8 weeks after the embryos are frozen. Now the way we go about this is the carrier, whether that's the mother or the surrogate, she's placed on medications, stimulating medications to mimic a natural menstrual cycle. Now that is coordinated with the transfer date of the cycle for optimum results. After the preparation is complete, the process of simply thawing the frozen embryos and transferring them to the uterus then happens. Now for the longest, most people preferred a fresh transfer because they believed, and the numbers showed, that fresh transfers typically resulted in a higher rate of pregnancy success and live births. However, thanks to science, research, and medicine, things have gotten a lot better. So, which process has the better chance for success? Believe it or not, a lot of professionals believe now that frozen embryo transfers have a better chance of success. Let's talk about why. Before we talk about why, go ahead and comment below on what you would prefer if you were going through the IVF process or surrogacy process. Would you prefer a fresh embryo transfer or a frozen embryo transfer? I'm interested to see. Now, contrary to what used to be conventional wisdom, frozen embryo transfers allow for a higher pregnancy success rate than using fresh embryos. And the success rate for using frozen embryos in recent years has made it a popular choice before deciding to do a fresh embryo transfer. And there's a few reasons why. One of the reasons is that freezing the embryos allows the uterus of the woman who will be carrying the embryo to return to a more normal state after having been on fertility medication. The advantage of this is that it provides for a more natural embryo implantation condition. Another reason that scores a point for frozen embryo transfers is that it lowers the risk to pregnancies. Believe it or not, studies show that pregnancies resulting from a fresh embryo transfer have more chances for complications. Another check in the box for frozen embryo transfers is that it allows for PGS and PGD testing. That's screening or diagnosing the embryos before they're transferred to check them for any genetic abnormalities and things like that. So that gives the baby a better chance of being born healthy because they use the healthiest embryo to transfer. At the very least, most professionals would agree now that regardless of the amount of time between embryo freezing and thawing, you can expect nearly the same potential for success as with using fresh embryos. A study published in 2018 by the New England Journal of Medicine found that frozen embryo transfers done on women with infertility issues associated with PCOS had higher live birth rates. So that leaves us with, can you keep embryos frozen indefinitely? What's the lifespan of a frozen embryo? People ask, do frozen embryos expire or do they have a best before date like you see on food from the grocery store? Well, normally frozen embryos stay extremely viable for 10 to 13 years. And some, under certain conditions or circumstances, can stay frozen for 55 years. If this is your situation or it's an available option for you, make sure that you speak to the clinic and let them inform you on how long your frozen embryos could be viable. Make sure you also let them know on how long you plan to store your frozen embryos. Have the conversation. At any rate, the most important thing is to always stay in touch with your clinic or your doctor, because you want to make sure that your embryos will be there when you return to claim them. You wouldn't want to be that person where the clinic just discarded your embryos when their storage room ran out and they couldn't find you. So if you're simply considering keeping your embryos on ice, as we say, in preparation for a sibling journey, just note that you should be good unless you're really trying to have a sibling that's like 5 decades older than your other child. Well, if you're thinking about creating embryos to start a surrogacy journey, then I have something for you. It's a training that I created called the Surrogacy Path, and you can simply get it by clicking the link below, and I walk you through case studies of previous clients of mine that talk about what they ran into with their surrogacy journey, and it helps equip you to know what to expect on your surrogacy journey. If you want it, it's free. Just click the link below. See you in the next episode.